So my topic was to do more research about Down syndrome and also to dive into the thoughts of people affected by this condition, including the relationship between Lewis and Harper, and addressing if her thoughts and relationship was realistic in the novel. So most of the information is going to be from Dr. Brian Scottco in a YouTube video about Down syndrome. So what exactly is Down syndrome? To summarize it, Down syndrome, or trisomy 21, is a genetic disorder, and it results from an extra copy of chromosome 21. So the additional genetic material impacts body and brain development, and characteristics include like abnormal physical features, intellectual disabilities, and potential health issues like we see in the novel with Harper. And in 2021, it was estimated that there was around 7 million people in the world that have Down syndrome. And at the time, that was around like 0.1% of the world population. So what is it caused by? So to make things simple, Down syndrome occurs when a person has extra material from chromosome 21. So a typical person, kind of like us, we have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs. However, people with Down syndrome in pair 21, they're going to have an extra copy of chromosome 21. So rather than having two, they're going to have three. There are actually three different types of Down syndrome. So type number one is known as trisomy 21, and it's simple. They have 47 chromosomes in every cell of their body. And this is the most common case. So it covers around 95% of the cases that have Down syndrome. Type number two is known as translocation Down syndrome. This occurs when the extra copy of chromosome 21 is attached to another chromosome, like let's say 13 or 14 or 15. Hence why it's called translocation, because it's at another chromosome. However, though, the body still recognizes three copies of chromosome 21. So therefore, a person with translocation Down syndrome has the same characteristics as a person with trisomy 21. The only difference is that a person with translocation Down syndrome can pass this on, or they could inherit this type of Down syndrome within the family. And this accounts for a very small percentage of Down syndrome, around 3% of the cases. So type number three is known as mosaic Down syndrome. This occurs when only some cells, but not all the cells in the body, have an extra pair of chromosome 21. So the amount of cells, as well as which cells that have an extra copy, could determine how many characteristics and which characteristics about Down syndrome you will have. So speaking of characteristics, what are the common characteristics of Down syndrome? So this is from the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. So Down syndrome's characteristics varies from person to person, so it's not same for everyone. But a couple examples of physical symptoms could be slanted, upturned eyes, smaller ears or shorter neck, or a flat nose bridge. And intellectually, it could be a short attention span, impulsive behavior, slower learning, or delayed language and speech development. So how do people with this disability think? So all this information to say that they're a lot like everyone else. They aren't much different from the rest of the world. And I read a story about a woman that her name is Melissa Riggio, and she shared her story about her living with Down syndrome. And she says she's pretty similar to everyone. She reads books, she watches movies, she watches TV, she goes to school, she's on a swimming team, she thinks about her future husband, she said, and she has feelings, she has friends and all that stuff. So that leads to say that can we say that Harper's thoughts throughout the novel are realistic? In my opinion, yes, I think they are, because she's not completely clueless. She still knows, she knows what's going on. She knows who's who and she knows where she is, but she doesn't like quite know some concepts, and you could tell that she has some kind of intellectual or learning disability. Um, like we said, I think death, she doesn't quite understand it, or also like the heart transplant, she doesn't quite understand what it is. Like she questions herself, why do I need this? And she wants to keep her own heart. And also for um, so can we say that Harper and Lewis's relationship was realistic? So from the National Down Syndrome Society, it used to be a myth that people with Down syndrome, well, sorry, people thought that people with like an intellectual disability cause permanent childhood behavior, So like that they would never engage in like relationships or sexual activity. But in fact, all people with Down syndrome have sexual feelings and intimacy needs. So yes, in my opinion, we could say that Harper and Lewis's relationship was realistic because we could observe many times that Harper and Lewis gave each other affection. So my question for you guys, and also give my own opinion about this. So despite people with Down syndrome may have learning disabilities and a harder time understanding things, do you think Marlo should have respected Harper's decision that she did not want a heart transplant, even if she did not quite understand what it was? So in my opinion, I'm kind of split on this because like for one part, I think yes, Marlo should have respected it because in the end, it is her decision and it's her own body, and like she can't really choose for her. And like the way she kind of almost like lied to her about where they were going for the heart transplant, I think it was wrong. But at the same time, she doesn't really understand what it is, and she doesn't also understand what death is. So if she doesn't go through with it, she's gonna die. So I'm really split on it.
Well,
Yeah, well, oh,
well, you can go ahead.
yeah, well, I'm a bit split too, like because like you said, she doesn't really understand the concept of death. And of course, but of course, like you talked about the Melissa, the woman with Down syndrome and how she lived her life like anyone else. So maybe that maybe like Harper can still make decisions, but maybe a heart transplant is a bit too intense for her to decide. So I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's not great. It's not like super ethical and great because at the end of the day, as you said, there's still completely normal human beings and they have feelings and I mean, they can. Yes, she doesn't know what it actually is, death, and yes, she doesn't know what really our transplant is and why does she need it. But at the end of the day, I think she should kind of still have a say on what's going to happen to her, even if it's, especially if it's like a big procedure like that.
Well, personally, I get that it's Harper's body, and in the end of the day, she should be the one deciding. But at the same time, if I were in Marlo's place, I think I would have done the same thing because I would have been so frustrated to see that my sister or let's say my loved one did not understand the concept of getting a heart transplant and they were still refusing it. I think I would try and push the person to get the procedure because in Harper's case, it was really necessary for her survival. And well, she was so happy when she was alive. She loved spending time with Lewis. She had friends and her activities. So I knew she would have liked to keep living that life. So I would have tried to fight for her, even though she did not want it, because I think she did not understand it, the concept. Do you guys have another question on the subject?
No, we're supposed to have two questions.
No, I
No.
can ask a question related to. I thought about this. Do you think that people with Down syndrome should be able to live by themselves, or they are not capable of making those decisions?
Um, that's a tough one, but I would say I would probably lean more towards no, because yes, they do have normal like feelings and all that stuff, and however, though it still states that like they have some sort of learning disability, and there may be sometimes like stuff where they might not make the right judgment about stuff. So I think they should still be watched over someone that's able to like monitor what they're doing. Maybe not at all times, but just in case something happens.
They don't have a great judgment. Everybody, I mean, everybody doesn't have great judgment
Yeah.
all the time, so everybody's gonna make stupid decisions or whatever. But I agree with you that I would say exactly like you said, not at all times, but somebody who checks in just on occasions to check on how the person's going, and I think that's the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I'll go ahead.
like you said, since they have a learning disability and sometimes they don't make the right decisions, I think that maybe if they lived alone, they would, have being having to fix your house, for example, maybe they won't take the right decision. Like maybe they can read and have feelings, and they can cook and they can be alone in that sense. But when it comes to making big decisions, I don't think they're going to be capable of making the right decisions most of the time.